Let's talk about cooperation. More importantly, cooperative behavior that leads to a cooperative network and how it is superior to an individualistic, selfish network. So we're going to look at two different ecosystems in the animal kingdom. We're going to look at the wildebeest, and we're going to compare the wildebeest ecosystem to the fire ant. Now here's a herd of wildebeest, and you see a lioness has attacked one of their own. Does it really matter? Is it strength in numbers? Well, not really, because it doesn't matter if they have a herd of a few thousand or 10,000 or 100,000 wildebeest. It's the same result. One lioness can come in, send the entire group into a panic, and she's going to grab the slowest, weakest, the oldest one for herself. And no other wildebeest is going to defend that one. Now, you can see that the wildebeest actually have pretty powerful horns. If they wanted to, if they could see the advantages to cooperative behavior, they'd be able to stop any lioness attack. But it's not in their nature to defend each other. So, they're not gonna. It's everyone for themselves. Now, let's see the difference between that ecosystem and the ants ecosystem. This is a different level of cooperation where they work together to solve problems. They think they behave as if there's a collective mind behind there. So here's an example of like what I think of as ultimate level of cooperation. If one fire ant were to fall in water, it would surely drown. But if multiple fire ants fall in water, they hold mandibles together and they create a living raft. And the goal here is to not let anyone drown. So essentially what John Nash was saying, do what's good for you and the group. So what are we? Wildebeest or fire ants? Well, let's get the help of another animal from nature and see how we turn out. So here's a conference, and we're going to drop a bear here. What happens? Well, everyone acts individually, right? I mean, nobody really knows what anyone else is going to do if anyone has their back. And so in a situation where you don't have a shared vision, you don't know what anyone else is going to do, the selfish move is the optimal move. So everyone for themselves. So in this example, human beings act no different from the wildebeest. Now you might think, well, okay, does that mean that we are no different from wildebeest? Well, not really. So it really depends on the situation. So here's a family camping trip, and there's small children there. And we're going to drop a bear here. So what happens? Well, the small children clearly can't defend themselves from the bear. The moms are certainly going to be extremely, they're going to run to the aid of the children. And everyone here is family. So the men are going to be protective over the women and children. And, close second, they're going to be protective over the other adults as well. Since they're all family, leave no family behind, they're going to stick together. Biology, nature, in this example, has given them a shared vision, a way to collaborate and see the benefit of collaboration. So shared vision is important to creating a cooperative network. Here's one of the problems that comes about when you're trying to create a cooperative network. You've got the messaging problem. And the messaging problem is basically if you have an ecosystem of, say, 10 people, sending a verbal message towards your entire audience is going to be exponentially more difficult with 10 people, with 100 people as opposed to 10 people. It's because, well, as you'll see, so the earth is round. Well, she agrees. He's not sure. He disagrees. She doesn't care. And the thing about this is if you have 10 people, that's 10 different perceptions of reality. And as your ecosystem grows in size, if you have 100 people, that's 100 different perceptions of reality. That's 100 people you have to convince when you verbally say something that what you're saying is correct. And that's not very scalable. It becomes exponentially more difficult as your ecosystem grows in size. So, the optimal way is actually to use nonverbal messaging. In game theory, we call it signaling. And this is where it's basically actions speak louder than words. So if I was to convey that the Earth is round, I would launch a weather balloon with a GoPro camera, and I would prove that the Earth is round. It takes longer to set that up, but it's pretty clear that they can see the Earth is round. So anyway, actions speak louder than the words. So verbal messaging, it's easier to execute. You don't have to think very much about it. You verbally message you send your message, you put your ad, and but it comes with its consequences. Basically, it's exponentially more difficult as your ecosystem grows. But nonverbal messaging, while it takes longer to set up and execute actions, it can handle an audience of any size as word quickly travels throughout the network. Let's look at two different kinds of ecosystems. There's closed ecosystems and open ecosystems. And in general, we're trying to compare what a company is to, which is a closed ecosystem, to an open ecosystem like, a cooperative network. So quality over quantity. Well, an ecosystem is like a company. In a company, though, it's a closed ecosystem, so you get to pick your employees. The culture does matter. Your initial employees have to be of quality. And your vision can be expressed verbally because, you have rules. If you don't follow the rules, you get fired. In an open ecosystem, you don't get to choose your employees. Every actor has their own free will. They can join, they can come and go as they please. You can get bad actors, you can get good actors, and it depends on what the initial culture of your ecosystem is. From your ecosystem's, the seedling stage, how it grows, how that culture grows, it's extremely crucial. And ideally, you want to have a shared vision within your culture initially, and have it propagate and grow in a way such that it spreads to your newer the newer actors that join. Your vision should be very clear, and it cannot be expressed verbally. It has to be expressed non-verbally. So should you do marketing early? Should you open up Pandora's box? Well, when you do marketing early, you don't have a shared vision. You have not established any of that. You don't have a solid foundation. So what you actually end up with is a poor quality set of users because you have a lack of foundation. So think of your ecosystem as a brain, and there are different layers of your brain. So if you have no shared vision, if you have no proper foundation, the mindset of this collective brain goes all the way down to, say, the mammalian brain, which really is about everyone for themselves. It devolves really quickly down to a culture where nobody really looks out for each other. And once that ecosystem is, the dominant culture is set, you cannot change that culture to be a cooperative culture. It's basically like saying, can you convince a wildebeest to act like a cooperative ant? It's nearly impossible. But if you do it later, you can establish a shared vision first. You can have a solid foundation built, and then the quality users that are there can help build and extend a solid foundation moving forward. That will yield a more cooperative culture and network. And that's really the key of a network. The strength of the network really depends on the interconnections between the actors, the engagement within the the network and the actors present within it, and how cooperative they are. Basically, a cooperative network is infinitely more valuable than an individual network, and we're going to see that in the next slides. So, at the core of a culture is how the actors behave. So you have social norms and you have market norms, and basically social norms are, help each other out, not for immediate financial gain, but more it's easy for me to do it. I can help someone, so I'm going to help. And the thing about social norms is that, imagine if you have a network filled with people that think about just helping people for the sake of helping rather than what monetary reward they get. But market norms is different. Market norms is where you're not really helping anyone unless they pay you. And here's a quote from Dan Ariely. It's where you cannot mix social norms and market norms. You can't treat someone like your customer impersonally if you've started treating them as a friend. So basically, you have to make that distinction. And the thing about market norms is that once you shift over to market norms, you can't shift back to social norms. With social norms, you have a sense of community, helping each other. There's no money involved, and it leads to a culture of cooperation. With market norms, the objectives are clear. I pay you for the work that you're going to do for me. It's all about the money, and then you have a culture of a culture of competition. Now, an example to convey my point why you can't shift back from market norms once you've shifted to market norms is that so say for example you need advice from someone, and you might say something like, hey, I'd like your advice on something. I'd love to take you out for coffee and discuss whatever. Now imagine so when you go out for coffee, now that's a discussion between two friends, or two colleagues. It's a meeting of the minds. It's you're not paying for that information. A cup of coffee costs whatever, but it's not about that. It's just two people having a discussion. But if you were to approach it with market norms, you might say something like, hey, I'd like an hour of your time to discuss something. Can I get your advice? Now, at that point, that person might be thinking, well, okay, under normal circumstances, when I bill by the hour, I bill $100 an hour. So naturally, if you want an hour of my time, you can pay me $100 and I'll give you that hour of my time. Now, that's a clearly different outcome from the first, inviting that person for coffee. But now, if you were to try to go back to social norms, it's very difficult because this person's already expecting that you're going to be paying them for an hour of your time, of their time. So, really, trying to go back to social norms is nearly impossible, because why would they do something for free or for the cup of coffee when they could have? I mean, they can make money, right? So which ecosystem creates more value, social norms or market norms? Well, this is a zero-sum game. Basically, what you want is on one end, and there's a clear divide between what they want, and you're trying to get them to give you what you want so that they can get what they want. And with a more effective ecosystem, you kind of try to merge what you want with what they want, and you try to create a non-zero-sum game, effectively creating a win-win situation. And the thing about a win-win situation is that if you design your ecosystem with a win-win in mind, and most of the actors in your ecosystem are thinking in terms of social norms, you're going to have an overall greater value created within the ecosystem, because there's some value generated from each actor or the majority of actors within that ecosystem, versus market norms where nobody's doing anything for anyone unless they get paid. So that's my speech about cooperation.